10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 495. Hey everybody, just a quick reminder before we get into today's episode that all of these episodes are available as videos on my YouTube channel. You can just go to YouTube, search for my name, Nick Manella, and it should be the latest video on the channel, depending on when you're listening to this. So if you want to see any of the visual aids that I am putting on the screen, that is the place to do it. While you're over there, get subscribed, turn on notifications so that you don't miss an episode. All right, without any further ado, let's get into the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode on Giant Steps. And this week we're going to continue what we started last week, which is to talk about voice leading, but make it a little bit more fun and melodic and challenging. So this is the second in our series on learning giant steps. So if you haven't checked out the first video, pretty much everything that we're going to do today is related to that and dependent on your ability to do last week's exercise. And also a reminder that anything that I put on screen or any recordings I play, they are available as downloads if you become a supporter of the channel. So if you want the materials that I'm presenting to you here, just simply click on the link in the description, sign up for a profile in our totally free online jazz education community, Jazz School. And then once you're in, you'll see some instructions on how to support us with a small monthly donation and get all of these practice materials in return so you can start working on this stuff right away. Okay, so let's dive into it. So last week we talked about going through giant steps using two methods, one note per chord or straight up half notes, and starting to weave our way through the progression with good voice leading and understand how these seemingly disparate key centers are actually connected with common tones and half steps and whole steps and all that good stuff. So this week, we're going to take that exercise and we're going to kind of put it on steroids a little bit. Got two things to show you today. The first is that now we want to graduate to playing quarter notes through the entire progression. And this I found when I was working on giant steps to be the most helpful exercise because it's simple enough that I felt like I could do it at a really slow tempo. But on the flip side, it took enough knowledge of the chord changes and familiarity with the chord changes that it really started to teach me how I would ultimately be able to play over this tune freely. So if there was any one exercise that I did on giant steps, I think that the stuff that I'm going to show you today is probably the most valuable and went the furthest in terms of me eventually being able to play over this tune and not have like a panic attack. So the idea is really simple. What we want to do is we want to come up with quarter note lines, and your mind might go immediately when you think about quarter notes to a bass line, but we don't want to think about these as a bass line. What we want to think about them as is a melodic line that has good voice leading. Now, in last week's episode, again, I was a little bit more restrictive. I said, hey, you should probably use chord tones. In this exercise, I actually don't want you to use just chord tones. I want you to think outside of the box a little bit and think about how you can connect from chord to chord in more interesting ways. What may be a good idea in terms of chord tones is for maybe the first note over each chord to be a chord tone, but I wouldn't even say that that's a requirement. The biggest requirement of this exercise is that you think it sounds good and melodic. So let me show you a little example of what I've done so you can get an idea of the approach before you do it yourself. And this will be a 2-chorus exercise that I'm going to give to all the Jazz School members so that you can practice this, hear what it sounds like before you go on and do your own, which is really the whole point of everything. Okay, so if we look at the first line, again, what I want you to do is just choose an arbitrary chord tone to start on. So in this case, I've just chosen the root. And then what you could see is I've gone down to the 7th, and then, oh, that connects to the 5th. of the second chord. I'm choosing to keep descending, going down. So I use the next note down to bring me to the 7th of the next chord. And now I'm choosing to change direction. And you will notice that in this, I am using a chord tone as the first note over each chord. And I think that just provides for some nice clarity and structure within the thing. That'll kind of keep us grounded. So let me play the first couple of lines for you. And one thing that's going to be really cool about this exercise is that when we start playing quarter notes and we do this correctly, we really actually start to hear the sound of giant steps from the melodic line alone. Whereas in last week's exercise, it was sparse enough and there were enough common tones and things like that, that we kind of needed the backing track. But you're going to be able to tell that this is giant steps. 1, 2, 3. So I think that does a really good job of conveying, hey, this is giant steps. These are giant steps changes. And also, like I said, it's just challenging enough that you are going to have to spend a lot of time with the changes to be able to improvise something like this. That sounds good. That sounds melodic and that you like. All right, so I've got 2 courses of these quarter notes prepared. So let me play the whole thing with a backing track. Now, if you play a wind instrument, you're going to have to break your quarter notes at some point to catch a breath. So you'll just notice me doing that throughout the exercise when I'm starting to feel like I'm suffocating. So here we go. Here's 2 courses. Okay, so there you have it. Now, the next thing that I want you to do, and don't do this until you can do, 2, 3, 4 courses of quarter notes without stopping, and you're happy with the result, is that we can start to inject some eighth notes whenever they feel good. So I'm not going to say, hey, put 2 eighth notes on beat 4 of every measure. You could do that, but what I prefer to do is allow myself to play some eighth notes wherever I'm feeling them in the phrase. Where do they sound musical? And the basic idea here is that everything's based off of quarter notes still, but I'm allowing myself to play a few eighth notes when I hear it and I feel comfortable doing it. And this is sort of where the exercise transitions from something that's really planned and has like a clear set of instructions to start to open up to how you're going to think when you're actually soloing, right? It's like, hey, inject this different rhythmic value wherever you want to, but keep everything mostly based on quarter notes, and quarter notes will be your baseline. To me, that's a really good transition point between an exercise and then actually soloing. So let me play the first 2 lines of this exercise and you'll hear where I'm starting to add some eighth notes. 1, 2, Now, what are these eighth notes incorporating? Well, let's look at the first set. So on beat 4 of the first measure, I'm on the 5th, and I'm playing chromatically from the 5th of that chord to the 3rd of the next chord. All right, where's the next one? Well, bar 4, on beat 2, I'm on the 7th of that minor chord, and I'm playing a little enclosure of the 3rd of the next chord. So I'm playing the 7th, then I'm going down and doing a chromatic approach into the 3rd of that next chord. And then if we look down at measure 7, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm on the 5th on beat 1, and then I'm playing an enclosure to the third, diatonic above, half step below. And you're going to notice that throughout this exercise. I'm using the eighth notes in a hopefully musical way to connect the chords in an interesting way. So let me play these two choruses for you, and this is an exercise that you will get in concert B flat and E flat, so that you can kind of observe mine before you go on and start doing your own thing. Here we go. All right, so there you have it. Now, again, the idea here is that you can start by writing out your own version of this, maybe a 2-chorus version of just quarter notes so that you can slow it down, have time to think, work out exactly the notes that you want to play. But the whole point of this thing is that eventually you can put on a backing track or something like that really, really slow, and you can start to improvise your own path through the changes using just quarter notes, or you can open yourself up to, hey, whenever I hear some eighth notes, let me put those in there as well. And again, the idea here is that if you can't play a couple of choruses of quarter notes all the way through and make it sound good and melodic, find those transition points and those solid melodic lines, it's going to be really hard to play a great solo over this. It's just a way of getting deeper and deeper into the changes so that you truly understand the way that the harmony works, that you could hear it, that you have sort of the muscle memory of this particular progression. And it's just great, great foundational work to do over this tune if ultimately you want to be free over the entire thing. Okay, so use this week to practice my exercises and then ultimately try to play choruses of quarter notes on your own, and you will find that if you've been doing the exercise from last week and this week, these changes are just going to really start to feel comfortable to you. You'll really truly understand this harmony, which is what we're after. Okay, next week we're going to really start to open ourselves up to some soloing, but in a very particular way. So if you're not subscribed and you don't have notifications turned on, make sure you do so that you don't miss an episode. Remember, if you want all the materials and you want to support the channel, join the over 100 members we have over on Jazz School doing that exact thing and enjoy all the benefits that come along with it. As always, thanks for hanging, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.